Opening the Door is a series of introductory workshops to the whole heart connection world. It seems like these are days when it's not easy to take a whole weekend. Even though the intro workshop is a kind of shortened weekend, it's 5 hours a day. So it is a little more condensed than it used to be. That still can be a lot for somebody who's really not sure what is this? What are they getting into? It doesn't seem well described because it's kind of indescribable. And so I made it because I really do want people to have a chance to find out what this is all about in a smaller piece. So I'm doing a series of different subtopics that at least give people an idea of what they might learn. It's not really comparable because what you can do in 2 hours is not the same as what you can do in a whole weekend, in part because you have the opportunity to sleep, and there are many patterns that we learn something new, we sleep, and then we do the same thing or take it further the next day. There are things I can't do with people until their neurology and endocrinology has had the chance to reset overnight. But there are some things that we can do in a 2 hour taster period in order to look at all the possibilities that we have forgotten as far as the potential of our neurology and endocrinology. That which we call spiritual practice is actually physiological repatterning, a way of being in our body differently such that we can access resources that we were born with. And that as time goes on, often, unfortunately, we lose touch with our natural sense of ease or security or confidence or creativity or deeply inspired compassion, such that you look at somebody and your heart is able to know them, just know them and love them, looking at them and hold them and actually be nourished by the sight of another person. This is all completely normal for what people end up with in whole heart connection practice. They end up in their own body and in their own heart in such a way that they can connect with their own resources so much more deeply. They can connect with other people with such a simple welcome, hello. And they can connect with that which I always struggle to find a word for. And I usually resort to saying the big thing, that which we are part of, but that which is greater than us, to be able to have a physical sense of that. So I'm doing 5 different topics. The first topic, which does not need to be your first introduction to it. You can start anywhere you like. Although honestly, starting with the first one there's a little, there's a reason why I made them in this order. The first is about an expanded sense of safety. People often don't think about where their sense of safety comes from, and often default into something called playing it safe, which is a highly conservative mode, kind of like defensive driving, but now it's defensive living, of keeping themselves shut and protected, possibly running a routine with a kind of auto receptionist personality so that they're not easy to know or connect with in any real way, and keeping on the alert for anything that reminds them of something that ever hurt them before and rejecting or avoiding that. if at all possible. That is not a highly inspired state. It does not lead to playful engagement. It does not lead to joy. It does not even lead to intelligence. Defensive living is not a smart state. It's a very neuro curtailed state. It's not even a very good way to engage with danger. A much more resourced and therefore successful way of working with danger is the way a martial artist does, namely by being much more in contact with our own resources of awareness and of recovery. These are two different things. We will be working with both in an expanded sense of safety. That expanded sense of perception has to do with being in our body, learning to be in our body in such a way that we're able to sense more, which is actually a more open state. Open and able to feel from on the inside. Let's see if I can explain this. If I'm out here sensing, I'm nerve-wracked and actually always off center. And there's always something behind me, and I'm like you're just not always gonna, you don't know. We're going to be working with, and again, this is martial arts. It's also a million different spiritual practices, being able to come in and find our own core from which we can sense much more accurately, and may in fact be able to say, not the one I want to sit next to on the subway. Not really sure about that. Not from an outside picture of what he looks like, but from a more inner state of feeling like I'm not feeling right about this. There are many forms of awareness that dogs have and children have that grown-ups have often lost because their sense of safety is very outer and conceptual. But they can come back much more quickly than you think. So this is part of what we're talking about, an expanded sense of safety, is being able to come into our body in a way that allows us to come back into kinds of awareness that are natural to us and that we used to have. The other aspect of an expanded sense of safety is moving beyond the sense that safety means I will not get hurt. Given that most of us have already been hurt, it's then that would make it okay, too late. You'll never feel safe again because you've been hurt. Sorry. Or like trying to dodge them to never get hurt again. An expanded sense of safety has to do with the resiliency of connecting with our resources to roll with it. And or when even rolling with it gets a little bit difficult, to be able to heal. In Aikido, there's something called taking ukemi, which is when you're like, when you're taken to a point where you're off balance, you roll. You literally roll with it and come back in a more advantageous place. What does it take to make ukemi off of the mat? To lose, to really take a loss and roll. And to roll specifically for the sake of a recovery. How do we go into loss or even harm, pain, in such a way that we are maximizing our potential for recovery. I think that this is culturally a lost art. For the most part, we're like, dodge it, dodge it, dodge it. And when it finally gets us, we're like, oh, and then we're like, it's like there's no attention paid to, oh shit, now how do I go down in such a way that I'm going to come up again? Because that does change how we go down. And there are specific practices that allow us to be able to live our life in such a state that if in fact we are hurt, we will immediately go into a recovery process. Hear me correctly. I am not saying that if we are hurt, we will recover immediately. That is not what I'm, maybe you'll get to experience that. I haven't necessarily experienced that yet myself, but to immediately go into a healing state when hurt, when in pain, it feels very, very different. A lot of the problem with pain is that pain without the felt access to a healing state is scary. I think a lot of the problem with a lot of people's pain and loss is this feeling of, I don't know if I will recover because I don't know how recovery happens. I don't know what to do. It's very primal and basic. So often that very fear obstructs our recovery process. There are very simple teachings that should go along with the owner's manual of a human being. How do I heal? How do I shift into a recovery state? How do I access my core and my heart and my connection to the big heart so that I'm always in a healing state? And when something comes along, I still say, ow, but I'm so much less afraid of it. And I may not have recovered yet, but I can feel the wheel in motion. I can feel that it's coming back around. I'm not back around yet, but it's coming back around. This allows me to take different chances interpersonally and in my life in different ways, because I am both feeling for what is really dangerous and what is a boogly boo from my past. And my expanded awareness is allowing me to sort that out a little more clearly than I was. And I know that if you end up not wanting to go to tea with me, or you reject my proposal of something or other, or you actually end up not thinking I'm the most wonderful person the way that I think you are, it will hurt, but it'll hurt okay. It'll be all right. When we have connection with our recovery capacity, we know that the end of this episode is going to be that it turns out all right. And so we can give it a try. We can extend. We can allow our face to express genuine affection that we might otherwise feel too vulnerable to express. We can say to people, you mean a lot to me. And have our sincerity hanging right on out there. That allows other people to say, wow, that's so cool. And things go differently when we're no longer playing it safe, but have an actual expanded sense of safety.